We've all been there before. A new fighting game has just come out, and for months you've been grinding your new main character. When suddenly there's an update, you begin to burst into a cold sweat, wondering, will my main get nerfed? There is nothing in the world worse than that feeling when you look at the update and you see that your character that you've been grinding out is now a lot weaker than he used to be. Today, we're going to learn about the controversial topic in fighting games, game balancing. As always, we want to answer a few questions. This time around, we want to answer, why do developers nerf and buff characters? Does changing characters hinder the competitive future of a game? And how do you deal with character balancing changes? Let's dive right into these topics and discover the truth behind game balancing. Why do developers nerf and buff characters? The answer is actually quite simple. Sometimes developers make characters that are way too powerful and they have to nerf them to make them equal to other characters in the cast. However, it also works on the flip side where characters are way too weak, so the developers start to buff those characters to make them equal to the stronger characters in the game. However, this concept of nerfing and buffing characters is relatively new. I remember back in the day playing like old Mortal Kombat games, you would have characters that are just way more powerful than other characters in the cast, and there are no ways that the developers could update the games. So all you had to do is just wait until the new game came out. Hopefully that character got nerfed. There's nothing else you could really do about it at the time. This is completely different than what we have now, where developers can actively patch and update their games and listen to their audience grievances. This creates a disconnect between competitive players and casual players due to developers constantly trying to appease everyone with no clear direction. Look at a game like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. The community is completely torn on which characters are strong based on the level of skill people are playing at. For example, if you're a casual player who does a lot of free for all matches, you'll probably think a character like Ganondorf is a pretty strong character due to his incredible kill power. However, in a competitive one on one situation, Ganondorf is ranked as one of the worst characters in the game due to his poor mobility and frame data. Developers have to listen to both sides and try to find a middle ground that everyone just ends up not agreeing with. This makes it incredibly difficult for developers to properly nerf and buff characters in their game since they don't know which side to go with. It all just ends up being under their discretion. Does changing characters hinder the competitive future of a fighting game? This is the controversial part of patching and updating a game. You don't want to nerf the game so bad that it's not fun to play anymore. You also don't want to buff characters up so well that those characters completely take over the game. It's a very difficult process for developers to try to create a balanced game that everyone can truly enjoy. Let's look at another Smash game, Super Smash Bros. Melee. In Melee, the community has taken all of the incredibly difficult techniques and created something entirely different than what was originally intended. Things like L canceling and wave dashing have revolutionized the competitive nature of Melee and created a strong community of players under it. Now imagine that there was a new patch in Melee that took out all of those amazing exploits and techniques that players have learned to love. Saying people would be upset is a complete understatement. Players have put hours, even years, into honing their skills, and if somehow you were able to patch those things out, they would not be playing the same Melee anymore. Basically, the community would crumble, and Melee as we know it would cease to exist. However, it's also fair to argue that patches and updates keep fighting games alive as well. Let's look at an example of Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. When the game came out, it was incredibly glitchy. There are just so many infinite combos in the game. You'll get one grab on your opponent and you just take their stock. Stuff like that wasn't entirely fair. It wasn't particularly hard to do either. So having some of those infinites get patched out of the game helped the competitive nature of the game, even though it did end up nerfing those characters. Sometimes there are things in fighting games that are broken and hurt the competitive nature of a game. In these instances, it's perfectly reasonable to patch those things out or to buff other characters to be able to compete with it. There just has to be a balance within the game so that players can truly enjoy it. I think developers just need to have it on a case to case basis. Yes, changing characters and patching the game can definitely have some negative effects to the competitive future of the game. However, the opposite is also true. You have to know your community that is playing the game so you know how to patch the game accordingly. How to deal with character balancing changes. So the time of reckoning is finally upon you. Your character, your main, the character you put all of your time and effort into over months, hours, days, they've gotten nerfed. What do you do? What steps do you take? Should you switch to a different character? Should you just keep riding out with the same character, hoping that they might get patched and buffed again? What should you do? It's 2021. Character loyalty is dead. Pick up the new top tier and start winning some games. Nah, I'm just joking. But seriously, what do? Your character just got nerfed. You see in the patch notes that your character was on the chopping block. What steps do you take to continue playing the game? The first thing you should do is to look exactly at what changed in your character and how that might impact you in future matches. For example, we can look at a game like Street Fighter V. About a year ago, I was playing a character by the name of Seth. He had a move that was incredibly plus on block, meaning that after he hit your block with this move, he was able to pressure the opponent a lot easier compared to other characters and they couldn't really do anything about it. With this patch, it made that so that was not the case anymore. They took a few frames off of the move, making it not as plus on block as before, and now Seth doesn't have the same overwhelming advantage that he had before. On paper, if you're just a casual player, you might not even have noticed that this was a change to the character, since he was still relatively a good character even after the nerf. However, on the competitive side of things, a lot of people dropped the character after this nerf. It incredibly changed what Seth could do and made a lot of people think that he wasn't as good as a character as he used to be. And that just made them change to other characters who didn't get hit as bad in the nerf or who didn't get hit at all and were still very powerful in the game. At some point, you have to measure the pros and cons of patches to your character. You need to answer questions like, do you still have fun with this character? Is this character still competitively viable? And do you need to play the character drastically different than before the patches were implemented? You want to make sure you research the ramifications of any nerf or buff to characters to see if there's still a future for you to keep playing them. Of course, there's still always going to be that feeling of loss whenever your character gets nerfed. If you put a lot of time and energy into that character, learning new techniques and innovating old ones, if those techniques get nerfed out of the game, that can be very devastating. Like, look at Street Fighter V. When the game came out, Nash was one of the best characters in the game. And Evo, he won Evo, they nerfed him into the ground. And now you never really see anyone playing the character anymore. And that's really sad. At the end of the day, you need to adapt to the new situation you are under. You can do things like picking up a secondary character or finding new ways to play as your main, and of course, picking up a new character entirely. You have to be prepared to put in the work just like you did before if you want to be successful. To give a final verdict on game balancing, I believe it is a necessary evil for developers to properly nerf and buff characters. Balancing a game while still making it fun and competitive is an incredibly difficult task that will always be a debated topic. However, changes are sometimes warranted to increase the longevity of a game itself. All we can do is react accordingly and work hard to stay successful. And that is it for the video, guys. Do you think games should be consistently nerfed and balanced? Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching. Peace.